But I wondered how, just ask each of you what comparisons you thought there were about what you have heard. I mean, Poland seems to me to have some similarities with Croatia, but obviously some similarities with Lithuania and the Baltic states.
Yes, I think that's a good point to start, that mass deportation, in Poland especially after 1939, that was something, I think the main reason was that this part of Poland started to be the new Soviet Republic, and that was the beginning for mass repression and mass deportation. That was 3 waves of big deportation from Polish voivodeships from this land. But I think that in people's hearts and feelings in Poland, that was so strong that even when in Poland in 1981 martial law was beginning, I remember that many people who were arrested, Polish dissidents, told me after many years after this experience that the Polish Czechists said to them, you're going to Russia, and they believed them. So that was so strong. 40 years after Second World War, still in Poland, that was quite deep feeling that Soviets could send us to Siberia, especially that many Poles who fight before communist era for Polish independence were sending to Siberia in 19th century before Bolshevik Revolution. So that's when we start talking about this, I think that's quite crucial for Polish case because I don't know what about Latvia, Estonia, and all the rest of the countries, but I think that, for example, Czech Republic don't have that kind of experience about deportation. So that's my opinion.
Lithuanian friends like to comment. You got those things there. You got bikes.
I think big differences between Baltic states and other Central and East European countries is that Baltic states after Second World War not became independent. They were occupied by Soviets and incorporated in the Soviet Union. It is big difference, and Soviets tractated this Baltic Republic like Soviet Republic, and all these repressions were very massive and brutal. It is big difference between repressions and Soviet terror in Baltic states and communist terror. I think in Balkan countries and maybe in Czechoslovakia and maybe in Poland was not so massive and brutal like in Baltic states or in Western Ukraine, because in Western Ukraine and in Lithuania was war after the war, big intensive partisan movement against Soviet last 10 years until Stalin death. And in this partisan war against Soviets in Lithuania were 20,000 Lithuanian partisans killed, 20,000 for this small country like Lithuania, from less than 3 million citizens. It is very big, very big losses, and 130 residents who were deported to Siberia, and 150,000 were sent to Gulag. It was very, very big losses.
These your partisans are anti-communist partisans.
Yes, yes.
Here, partisan is another word for communist.
Yes, anti-communist
yes.
partisans. No, not Soviet, not red partisans, but green forest brothers.
Would you? Well, let's go on with comparisons. You have, obviously, it is different if you are under the Soviet Union, but the training and the institution and creation and then the training of OZNA and is it KNOI? And the training of these people, we know from evidence, actually was done by the Soviets. And these were, their whole system, for example, even the classification of their documents was actually straight from Moscow. So I don't know how much we think the ability of the party to destroy its enemies was less because there was not deportation. It depends how strong you think, I suppose, local people were, either siding with the secret police and informing on their comrades or joining them. But perhaps both you and Maria would just like to talk about the repression here compared with the repression that we've been hearing about. Igor.
There's a big difference between East Europe and Baltic states because they were under the Soviet Union directly, and other East countries, states were in fact colonies of Soviet Union, but what was not officially the part of it. But Yugoslavia is a special case because we were very Stalinistic till 1948. When Tito, if he wants to survive, he must break with Stalin. And this was a very big difference because then Yugoslavia is trying to make some equilibrium between United States, West, and Soviet Union. And this oppression was not so hard after 1948 as it was after 1945. And they opened the border, but mainly because they want to get money from Western countries. Millions of workers go to Yugoslav workers go to Germany or other countries in Europe, and they are sending back the money. So it was very, very important for the very bad Yugoslav economy, in fact, because this was socialistic economy. So after 1948, there is a difference, big difference, because they were, the Soviets go out, and this was, of course, some softening of the repression, but still it was, till the end, it was, in fact, some kind of dictatorship, softer than it was in Eastern Europe and in, of course, in Baltic states, or even inside Soviet Union.
I would say that actually the regime softened not only for that reason that Stalin was out, but also for that communist authorities in Yugoslavia were so efficient in destroying enemies that they actually know so many enemies left, to be destroyed. That's my explanation. If you take a look at what was going on in the last stage of the war, let's say 1944, especially after the establishment of OZNA, that was, as we heard, established on the Soviet model of NKVD. They were so efficient that actually the number of their victims was so high that it could be compared with NKVD. That's maybe a reason why they could soften it after 1948. And let me just compare things. How efficient they were. So you mentioned the Cat and Forest massacre. Actually, it took place not only in Katin. It took NKVD from March 1940 to May or beginning of June 1940 to exterminate some 20,000 people for several months. In Tesno, in Slovenia, so both OZNA and the so-called KNOI, Corps of the People's Defense of Yugoslavia, so they were special military units that were doing their job, how to say. So it took them approximately a week to kill and bury 20,000 people at least. So if you compare these two same numbers, and actually that NKVD actually had on their disposal 2 months, and these guys were much more effective, you know, in 1945. You know.
Our people. Naši komunisti.
So-called our communists, yeah. Actually, students, how to say, in a way, won over their masters, you know.
Yes, I think I also, with hearing what Igor says, I would question whether 1948 was really a very significant year, because this was, of course, not when Tito broke with Stalin. It was when Stalin broke with Tito. And Stalin broke with Tito because Tito was too radical, as he'd always been. He was uncontrollable. He was had always, right from the earliest time, been on the sort of the left wing of his own party. And it had to be already warned by Stalin, I think 1943, not to be too overtly revolutionary. And the response of the party in 1948 here is interesting. You can follow this. Well, first of all, they were shocked here when they were reprimanded and then expelled from Cominform. They couldn't believe it. And the immediate responses actually were to suck up to the Soviet Union as much as possible and say, well, they said, yes, you are the leading socialist country in the world. You've just been you've been misled. And the other way that they wanted to prove that they were at least as radical as the Soviets was actually by being more radical. This is when you have the beginning of collectivization of agriculture. With this disastrous, they didn't actually have collectivization, the full Soviet sense of national ownership of land, but forcing through with these cooperatives, which were an absolute disaster. I mean, they brought the country almost to end of starvation. And samoupravljanje, self-management. Well, in the end, of course, it turned out to be something so chaotic that it looked a bit like capitalism with a lot of bureaucracy. But it wasn't intended as that. Kardel intended it as a kind of radical return to a revolutionary Marxism to prove that, then this of course became increasingly so, that what Stalin stood for was state capitalism, and that he had betrayed Marxism-Leninism. So without totally dissenting from what you say, I don't think 1948 itself is significant really for the long-term evolution. And obviously there was a long-term evolution of the system, but I don't know whether others think I'm wrong. Does happen. Mario.
I'm not a great specialist for that period, but when you mentioned, you know, that self-management and things like that, recently I had a chance to read some, let's say, US papers about the relation between Yugoslavia and actually the West in relation to the solution of that Trieste problem. So my impression is that in order to get as much assistance from the West, they tried to change the face of the country, you know, by introducing these absurd things like self-management and things to show that they are different than other communists, you know. That's also a possible explanation why they were doing these things, because in reality, you know, in those factories, even after the introduction of that so-called self-management, party boss was still party boss, you know, they had plans, so in reality things didn't change. Only later, during the 1960s, actually they were able to change things in a way, but at that time that was only, how to say, they had to invent some new face, to show it.
And if you look at what Agitprop were doing, they just had to try to remove Stalin, but say exactly the same things. I don't know whether any of us have any more points, but otherwise I'll ask for a couple of questions from the floor. Drago, do you want to ask? I think you're... Speak into this, Drago.
Thank you. I think, Robin, your point about those republics on the left side and the right side was a very important question. Dissidents were presidents in those right side, and the secretaries of party who became presidents on the left side. Which kind of division, or what's the common ground, or what's the basic difference between left and right side, in your opinion? That's my question. Was it just accidental? Was it because of personalities? Or were left side republics, different kind of republics on the right side? I would like to know the difference.
I think the answer is the Soviet system, because the Communist Party was the only ruling class without any concurrency. So all potential leaders were exposed, physically or another way. So the dissident movement was very small, I think, in comparison to Soviet society. So those leaders, of course, during the revolution, as we call it, in the Baltic states, it was a singing revolution. When, by the way, this revolution mostly was leading by the cultural figures, writers, poets, architects, and so on.
But they didn't last long.
Absolutely, yeah. So, but for the political everyday life, I think for this political games and so on, not so many people were skilled to do that. But when I made this research, I was surprised, because on this part of communist leaders becoming the presidents, we found a Lithuanian leader, Algirdas Brazauskas. And for instance, if we look at the Central Asia republics, if one exclusion, I think all of these secretaries became presidents. And in this part of former Soviet Union, Lithuania, the most anti-Soviet republic, mostly resistant.
But what is the most important differentia specifica with these two sides?
Personalities. And the system network, including unofficial network, unofficial relationship, patronage system, in the case of Soviet nomenclature. Informal relationships were also very, very important in this case.
Secretaries knew how to rule.
And I think in our case, in case of Lithuanian Communist Party, it was very interesting because it was a party that broken this unity of Communist Party. They quit the system.
Separatists.
Yeah, the separatist Communist Party. And they returned to Lithuanian Catholic Church, Vilnius Cathedral. It was also very important, symbolic gest.
Okay, thank you.
By the way, I think if we are trying to find some in common in these different countries, maybe one of these perspectives would be the fact that most of these countries are Catholic, including Lithuania, Poland, Croatia, and maybe this would be a basis for our future research, common research, because in Lithuania, for instance, we have a very strong Catholic non-armed resistance at that time.
But I think Catholic Church or Christians has this idea of democracy inherited, it's universal church. Maybe that's the reason.
Also the human rights.
He won't give it back. I think that, yes, on the Catholicism thing, but Slovenia was, although not as emphatically Catholic as Croatia, was Catholic. And you have enormous continuity between the communists. I mean, the name of Kuchan should hardly be forgotten in these matters, or indeed the complexion of your present government. And I was also thinking, although I do think it's true that Catholicism makes a difference, Hungary was majority Catholic at that time, and although they did it bloodily, they were able to suppress that very effectively, and I can't remember what the Hungarian secret police is called, but they were certainly just about as vicious, I think, as the Soviets. So perhaps the rule isn't universal, but I think there is something in it. Any more questions?
I have a question.
Please.
Yeah, first of all, I want to congratulate all of you. You have done a tremendous job. It was like retelling the history of my life to some extent, because I lived under Ceausescu for about 20, 21 years. So thank you very much for your presentations. I do have a question for the gentleman from Lithuania. You have done an awesome job giving us a lot of data, statistics about the population removal and arrests and mass deportation, so on and so forth. What I'm not too clear on is, was there some process of population replacement in the Baltic states, like it was in Moldova? Like taking the native population out of the Baltic states, Lithuania in your case, and then bringing in Russian ethnics? And if so, can you give us some statistical data on that aspect?
I think the process of the Second World War in Baltic states and in Moldova was very similar, because Baltic states and Moldova suffer from this massive deportation to Siberia, and in the 60s and 70s when began the process of industrializations, many thousands of Russian and Belarusian and Ukrainian came to Baltic states. Hundreds of thousands people came to Baltic states during 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I think in Moldova was similar process. Many thousand people came from Russia, from Ukraine to Moldova, especially to cities, to industries, and so this process of Russification was very intensive in these countries, in Moldova and in Baltic countries.
Was it a plan, Russification of the Baltic states?
I can add that there is a difference between Latvia and Estonia from one side and Lithuania from another side in this respect, because Latvia and Estonia historically were more industrialized countries than Lithuania, that specialized in agriculture, and Soviets some kind remain under Soviet rule. This different division remained. So in Lithuania, maybe also because of anti-Soviet resistance, Russian colonization, Russian-speaker colonization wasn't so intense than in Latvia and Estonia, and the results we can see until now. When you are visiting Latvia and Estonia, you can meet many people speaking Russian. In Lithuania, less, but now the situation, unfortunately, is changing because some last year we have this huge wave of immigration from the Russian-speaking world, from Ukraine, of course, it's understandable, but also from Belarus and from Russia. And now we have also this situation, Warsaw. Yeah. And when you are walking through the main streets in Vilnius, you can hear only Russian language, and it's not normal. But it's a new situation for us.
Do we have any more questions? Not working. Is the green light?
Oh, hi. Just question or suggestion. Wouldn't be useful and, well, truthful to call these periods in history and these regimes just Soviet and Yugoslav national socialist regimes, because it will destroy mantras their worshippers like to brag about, that they are internationalists and they fight this terrible nationalism, but in reality they just replaced one with the other nationalism, and that's all.
Well, that's the point. All right, I think, should we wind it up there? There is another... One more question. One more.
It's more a remark and invitation to draw some attention to a very interesting person, in my opinion, Dr. Borislav Arapovic. Dr. Borislav Arapovic is a Croat from Eastern Herzegovina, working for many decades in Sweden. And he has founded a remarkable biblical institution in Sweden, in Stockholm, which has a department for translating the Bible into languages of nations of former Soviet Union. And it is interesting, illegally, this institution, under his guidance, or guidance of Professor Borislav Arapovic, published, I think, about 4 million copies of the Bible for children, which was smuggled illegally, entering into Soviet Union. And it was, of course, very dangerous. This man is still alive, and I know him in person. He is very important internationally as well. And I wanted to draw your attention that this man risked his life in doing so. But amazingly, in, I think, 2004, he became an honorary member of the Russian Academy of Sciences, which is a great change of view. Another person I especially want to point to our dear friends and guests from Lithuania and Poland here. We have a remarkable and rather amazing point of contact in the 14th century, which is the name of Jadwiga Jagiello. Jadwiga Jagiello is a very famous queen, which was, in fact, proclaimed in the last decade a saint of the Catholic Church, and her origin is Croatian. Namely, her mother, Katarina, she was born in Bosnia as Kotromanic family, so this is a Croatian family. So this person, very important Polish-Lithuanian queen, and at that time Lithuania was larger than the present-day Ukraine. It was a huge country. So in this case, we have a point of contact between Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina as well, Lithuania, Hungary, because Jadwiga's mother, Katarina, she was also a queen of Hungarian state at that time. There are other things I would like to mention, very amazing, because I come from natural sciences, mathematics. The name of famous Russian Soviet scientist whose second name is Keldysh. Keldysh, who was the president of the Russian Academy of Sciences, and he was from one of the Baltic countries, I don't remember which one, but he's the scientific father of the Soviet space program. So Sputnik and other things were his masterpiece.
Well, that's very interesting. Thank you. We're going to end now, but we're also going to begin something else because we've got food and drink, which is always important. And I think it's called domjanak. And Mati says it's a mali domjanak. Vidjet ćemo. But thank you very much for coming along. But of course, above all, I want to thank our speakers who've done a terrific job, informed us, stimulated us, amused us, educated us, and thank you for coming, and let's give them a round of applause. Thank you.